The Mandate of Heaven DLC for Total War 3 Kingdoms releases on January 16th, bringing several new factions and some older ones back a handful of years before the start of the main campaign to the true beginning of the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Today, I'll take a look at what's inside the DLC, where it shines, where it doesn't, and if it's worth your time and your money. If you've already made up your mind and you'll want to buy it, you can use the Games Planet link in the description of the video to get 19% off, knocking it down to just £6.50 or right at around $8. Lastly, per the usual, I did receive a very early code for this DLC from Creative Assembly. It is always appreciated, but never ever has an effect on my overall opinion. Let's dive in. If there's one aspect of this DLC that really made it enjoyable, it'd be that Creative Assembly has nailed the setting of this time period with faction setups and situational events. The Emperor starts with a mountain of money, but the influence of the eunuchs means his economy is wrecked. The Zhang brothers get several turns to push their rebellion into as many regions in the north as possible before the Empire strikes back. Characters from the main campaign like Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Dong Zhuo are still loyal to the Emperor in this DLC, and they act in a very different way than their older, more power-hungry selves. The early campaign for any characters in the Han Empire is a refreshing one in the midst of total war, as it doesn't quickly devolve into constant war and backstabbing. There is a real camaraderie in a sense, as all these factions loyal to the Emperor come together, and I honestly cannot think of another Total War game that has so many factions willing to work as a team for what is seen as the common good. Flip that around for the Yellow Turbans though. Their campaign starts simple enough, but once the Empire enters the ring, you can expect hordes of armies pouring onto your lands, and you'll constantly need to be in two places at once, fighting every manner of army from every faction that doesn't have Zhang in their name. It's a very doable campaign despite the overwhelming odds, yet it feels hands down like the hardest ones I've ever played in a Total War game, and I'll go into why later in the video. The only kicker with this whole setting setup is the lack of devastation. Floods and other natural disasters were what caused this mess in the first place. Well, that and a complete lack of government support afterwards. There was a mass migration to the south, and the north was pretty barren in the scope of food and usable farmland, but you would never be able to tell that in this DLC. Everything is just bright and cheerful as always. Farms are a churning food in the north, and tens of thousands of people are pouring into your cities every single freaking turn. For how historically accurate this DLC is in terms of characters, there's almost no sign of Mother Nature's contribution to the conflict, and it sours the immersion a little bit for me. Running with this setting, the new mechanics of the Emperor and the Rebel Brothers are very relevant as well. The Emperor uses political influence in the short campaign to kick the eunuchs out of the imperial court, which frees up his economy to be more flexible and stem the bleeding. Eventually, he can use this influence to annex entire factions as the Empire starts to fall apart in the mid to late game, all the while using his far superior imperial army to do his fighting. His campaign is rather boring in the short campaign though, as I completed it having only a single province and around 30 turns. His subjects just threw everything they had at the rebels, and I just sat back, relaxed, and purged my imperial court. But get through that, and keeping the empire together is I think where the real challenge is. For the rebels, Zeal presents a very unique scenario as it's shared between all three of the rebel factions. It gives loads of benefits to replenishment and income that encourages you to attack relentlessly to keep that zeal up. Fervor is the other half of that coin, spreading the ideas of the rebellion even beyond your borders to cause public order problems for your neighboring enemies. All of these mechanics are very immersive into the playstyles of their respective factions, and it's great to see Creative Assembly keeping this trend of very relevant mechanics that are functional and not just creating filler material. There are a couple of issues with this DLC, and they're both kind of big deals. First, the seemingly impossible campaign. As mentioned before, playing as any of the Zhang brothers, you share your zeal mechanic, meaning that all three factions suffer minus 21 zeal per turn that cannot be modified. The goal therefore is to win as many battles as possible to help offset that, which works great in the early game. It's past turn, I don't know, 30 or 40-ish that it becomes a real problem. Either your other two brothers decide to turtle up to face the hordes of the Imperial forces, or they just start losing left and right. Regardless, across both of the Zhong campaigns I played, at one point there was a near complete stop to gaining zeal. That's a huge problem, and it causes massive public order issues among other things, and there seems to be no solution to fix it. Because my brothers no longer did anything or just always lost, I would have to fight and win at least 2 major battles every single turn to even think about offsetting that minus 21 zeal, and that does not happen but every handful of turns. It quickly spiraled into something I couldn't control in my Zhongjue campaign, and I just had to quit due to mass rebellions inside my own rebellion. I get that the Yellow Turban Rebellion historically did not last very long. However, I hope that this zeal problem was not intentional and that this campaign was by all means meant to be doable into the late game, but I just don't see that happening under the circumstances I played. The second issue is something Three Kingdoms has struggled with from the get-go, and that's replayability. In this DLC, if you play as one of the Zhong brothers, you've pretty much played all 3. The Emperor is certainly unique, but I'd never start a new campaign with him to try and do something different. And as fun as it is to play as Cao Cao or even Dong Zhuo in their younger positions, it's literally just a start position rework and you start out as a vassal of the Empire. Aside from the Emperor's Imperial Army, you still have all the same units as any non-rebellion faction, and even the rebellion only gets a handful of new units to play with. There is nothing that strikes me so hard that it gets me excited to start over and try something different. I did have fun in these campaigns, do not misunderstand that, but it's the desire to go back and play new campaigns, and it's still not there for me, and it really sucks since I still think Three Kingdoms is one of the better Total War games in recent history. So what's the verdict? For $8, you'll certainly get some fun out of this DLC. I'm still going to play as the Emperor on my own time to see if I can keep the band together. The Rebels are a lot more fun than their main game counterparts, they just fall apart the further along they get. There are definitely some highlights in this DLC, and it does play very closely to its historical roots, which I will always applaud. Yet if you're looking to get another 100 hours out of a DLC, you will be disappointed. There is just not enough here to keep you tied into Three Kingdoms beyond a small handful of campaigns that can honestly be accomplished decently quick. Thanks for checking out my review for the Mandate of Heaven DLC for Total War Three Kingdoms. If your heart is set on buying this DLC, you can check the link in the description, which will knock 19% off the price, bringing it to well within range of what it could be worth. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon as a way to support future content here, including more cinematic battles and documentaries. Thanks for watching, this is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next video.